It's time for Drummer Nation. Bob Breithaupt is a professor of music at Capital University in Columbus, Ohio, one of the most recognized percussion programs in the U.S. He has authored print and video instructional media and presents clinics and seminars around the world. Bob has performed with jazz artists Terry Gibbs, Byron, Stripling, John Pizzarelli, and has held down the drum chair in the Columbus Jazz Orchestra since 1980. He won the Yamaha Legacy Award for service to percussion education in 2014 and is a past president of the Percussive Arts Society. Sound Synergy's Percussion Care lubricants and conditioners include a series of 3 products for total drum kit care and maintenance. Percussion Care products in your gig bag ensures your entire kit will always look and sound its best. Check out their website at soundsynergies.net.
I absolutely love playing drums, and I couldn't imagine not having that in my life. And I really, if I could help facilitate that and have an impact on your life so that you can play drums, that means the world to me.
Hi, this is Stanton Moore. I've been playing and teaching drums for over 30 years. My new site, Stanton Moore Drum Academy, is the perfect online drum learning platform for any level drummer to learn how to play the drums the same way I did. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of you as subscribers on the site, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
Bob Breithaupt, welcome to Drummer Nation, and thank you for doing my show. How are you, my friend?
Oh, Michael, thanks. I'm great. The university's year is over with, so I'm sitting out here on my back porch and getting ready to do some traveling, but that's what's going on.
Well, that's terrific. You have such an interesting and varied background. It affords me many things to talk about. So let's start. I'd like to get a little bit of background on everybody for people who may not know you. Where are you from?
Well, I'm actually I live in Columbus, Ohio. That's where Capital University is, where I teach. I'm originally from this area. Traveled around a bit, but I've been here at Capital now. It's my 40th year of teaching, and everything else that goes on around this area that I've been involved with.
Way to go. Now, how did you come up and start playing drums? Did you have a formative period with a mentor, or how did it get rolling for you?
Well, I think just like most of us of my age, we were kind of products of the rock era to an extent, although for whatever reason I was drawn to jazz early on, especially guys like Joe Morello in particular, and Buddy Rich, of course. But and then all of the music of the day back in the '60s. It was such a fertile time, and it afforded us that were playing, the interest of either listening to Jimi Hendrix 1 minute and Dave Brubeck the next, and Herb Alpert the next, and James Brown the next.
Mm-hmm.
So it was such a great time. Started playing when I was about 10. Started playing drum set a couple years later, and started playing professionally when I was about 14 years old. And I lived in an interesting town, a small town relatively speaking, but it had a lot of professional people in it, a lot of advertising agencies and so forth, and because of that, there were a lot of jazz aficionados, sort of in the Mad Men context, that were up there as professionals, so I started playing gigs when I was real young, and playing for these people, and really had some fantastic experiences at a very young age, and then of course those guys got me interested in the great bands of the day, not only to listen to, but to see live, whether it was a Basie band or the Kenton band. My buddy John Von Ohlen, who we're celebrating these days, and from Cincinnati, got to see him as a young kid and become very influenced, and then moved on from there to college and whatnot.
Well, I was just up in Cincinnati for that benefit for John Von Ohlen. That'll be another show I'll do in a post later on. But what struck me was something Remo Belli had told me, which is that the center of the music industry used to be your neck of the woods there, from like Elkhart, Indiana, Columbus,
Yep.
Ohio, Indianapolis, Cincinnati. It was a hotbed of not only manufacturing, but players. And there's a lot of people up there who are veterans of Stan's band and Woody's band and Maynard's band and Ray Charles and Basie and all the big bands of the day, where a lot of cities don't necessarily have that background.
Right. Well, I mean, if you look at Columbus, you look at Pittsburgh, you look at Indianapolis. Certainly, we know about Detroit, Cincinnati. There are, there's so many players who were veterans and have, come back and played. I've been very fortunate to have been playing with the Columbus Jazz Orchestra, which is a professional big band now since 1980. It's led by Byron Stripling, the great lead trumpet player. And this is an incredible band. As you know, Jeff Hamilton was recently with us, and Jeff's been played with us many times. But this is this is just one example. But this is a big band that plays 75 to 80 services a year, a subscription concert series, and the whole deal, and so there's a lot of guys, especially in the Midwest, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Columbus, Pittsburgh, that have, and I'd be one of them, that found a way to put a variety of things together and make a career out of basically staying home. Certainly traveling a lot, but being able to do a number of different things all at one time, and have a very satisfying professional career out of it.
That's great advice for youngsters today. We'll talk about that in a second. But you came under the spell of John Von Ohlen at some point, right?
Absolutely.
Hey everybody out there in cyber world, this is Adam Nussbaum.
Hi, Dave DeCenzo here.
Hi, Bermuda Schwartz here.
Hey everyone, Stanton Moore here.
Hey guys, Johnson Pesta here.
Hey everybody, this is John J.R. Robinson.
Hi, Todd Zuckerman here for the Drum Center of Portsmouth. They're knowledgeable, they'll be able to help you and guide you and make the right choices for you and the music that you play.
From Wingnut to Wuhan, these chaps know what they're talking about. Highly recommended. But what do I know? I'm a drummer.
Von Ohlen, I saw Von Ohlen play the first time in 1971. And for your viewers who never saw John, I mean, go on YouTube and check out some of the Stan Kenton live things that he did. But he was an ominous figure as physically and musically in those days, with a sense of time that was really pretty spectacular. But a very imposing looking guy, dark, long black hair with a giant set of Gretsch drums with Evans heads on them, which made the drums sound like they were booming. They were big drums, and then of course in the tradition of the Kenton band, very, very large cymbals. And Stan just loved Von Ohlen, absolutely loved him.
He named him the Baron.
He would name him the Baron, and probably John was the most significant drummer that had played with the Kenton band since Mel Lewis or Stan Levy in the 50s, and then probably back another 10 years before that to Shelly Manne. I mean, I think we can obviously there have been a lot of great drummers with the Kenton band, but I think you can really put a stamp on that band and connect it to some very significant drummers along the way.
My first experience with big bands was at Stan Kenton Clinic, so I was a Kenton nut when I was a kid. And there's kind of two different styles of phrasing. There's a Kenton style, and you might want to call it a Basie style. But which do you feel more aligned with, and what are the differences?
Well, the Basie style of playing is one where traditionally you support the articulation and support the kick, support the figure, more so than leading into the figure. So there was, and the Kenton style of playing, or maybe let's just back it up, the Mel Lewis style of playing, which impacts the Woody Herman style of playing or the Kenton style of playing, frames the figure. It sets it up, it orchestrates it, it gets away from it, and so that I would say those are pretty two distinctive styles of big band playing.
That's a very good point. I know Holman wrote a lot for Stan's band. He wrote a lot for the other bands too, but his style of writing the drums are the glue that ties it together. And there'll be
Right,
long
right.
spaces where the drummer makes it work or not. And that's typical of that style. That's an interesting point. I haven't heard it articulated that way.
Well, let me go a little bit further. I mean, I used to talk to my students. Let's go back 15, 20 years when Vinny and Dave Weckl were doing so much playing. I used to talk about Dave Weckl being heavily influenced by at least. I don't. Dave and I haven't talked about this, but I assume he played in such an orchestrated way, like with the electric band, that it reminded me of the way Mel played with the Kenton Band in the mid '50s, because he sort of caught all the figures and orchestrated all the figures, but there was all of that stuff that was around it as well, and so. It was always fascinating to listen to.
And what I think that emphasizes is that big band drumming and what we learned from that is highly relevant today.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't look at big band drumming in a vacuum. You have to look at it as a means to learn to orchestrate and to set up figures, and to it's the best way to learn how to support articulation, and what that means: long notes, short notes, high notes, low notes. And if you can sing and get those things in your ears, I mean, it's ubiquitous. It doesn't make a difference what style you're really playing in. The principles behind that are very important.
Dynamic phrasing, let's not forget.
Exactly.
And then let's also not forget that when the whole band's not playing, it's a jazz combo.
It's a quartet or trio or whatever it is,
And that's a different style too. And also when you say big bands, it's not just Glenn Miller, man. There's like rock, funk, avant-garde, all kinds of extended orchestrations based on big band, sounds, movie scores, preparation for playing shows, like
Absolutely.
Broadway shows, all that stuff, following a conductor, reading the music. So that, I presume that's still at the heart of your teaching at the university. Sound Synergy's Percussion Care lubricants and conditioners include a series of 3 products for total drum kit care and maintenance. Pedal Lube, the only product specifically designed for bass drum, hi-hat pedals, and triggers, as well as all moving metal parts and drum hardware, safely removes grit, grime, and other contaminants while protecting against harmful friction wear. Cymbal Care restores and conditions cymbal surfaces without strippers or harmful polishes. Wear Barrier is a conditioning formula for all drum heads, rims, and even sticks. Percussion Care products in your gig bag ensures your entire kit will always look and sound its best.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny that you say following a conductor, because I talk to my students about, okay, if you plan to have a musical life where the only guy that's in front of you is doing this, then good luck to you. You've got so I mean that brings in the whole other spectrum of concert experience and whatnot, which we can talk about, because I've got some pretty strong feelings about that as it relates to the musical musical education. We have to be careful, Michael, that we don't teach for the last 50 years, as opposed to what, taking a wild guess at what might happen in the next 50 years. And so it's really easy for us as drum set teachers to, spang-a-lang it all day and deal with only that, which is very important, of course. But we also have to be, talking to our students about, what they're going to face as a performer, not just in the business, but as a performer, at least what we can anticipate that they might face over their career. Because college kid today is probably going to have 50 years before they can retire of trying to find a work.
Well, it ties into my next question. We have a lot of great schools and great educators like yourself. We have decidedly less work in this industry, and the 800-pound gorilla in the room when I talk to educators is, where are all these kids going to work? What's your take on that?
Well, I think that it depends on how you define work in the business. Okay, you and I mean, we've known each other as in a variety of contexts. I think we probably first became acquainted with me and from the retail standpoint,
Right.
with working with Columbus Percussion.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you about that in a minute.
Okay, so here's the thing. I think that it's important with young people to talk to them. Can they write? Can they think? Can they speak? And then, what can they do in terms of what's their musical palette? Of course, they're going to land on something that's strong. Drum set player, hand drummer, setter. But what else can they put in their bag of tricks? And how can something like timpani playing, for instance, impact your sound? Well, anybody that knows anything about playing timpani knows that you become a better drummer when you become a better timpani player.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, back in the early 80s, people used to talk about, well, I think I'm going to buy some Yamaha drums and some Black Evans heads because I want to sound like Steve Gadd. Why don't I sound like Steve Gadd? This guy was a hell of a timpani player when he was a kid. He developed that, in addition to everything else, developed a concept of that fantastic sound from working on other things. And so that's really the best way to answer your question is I try right from the beginning to look at a multiple level of skill sets, because being 62 years old, I've seen that we have to have a multiple level of skill sets, whether they be musical skill sets or just personal and business skill sets.
That's a great point. I'm also 62, been a veteran playing drums for more than 40 years, but I look at it as your musical basket. Yep. You have your styles you're strong with. Maybe I was never much of a symphonic player, ballads or anything, but I at some point became involved in a cymbal company. That's in my musical basket. Now I'm doing interviews and podcasts and writing and teaching and gigging. They all go in the musical basket, and whatever you can come up with that you're comfortable with will enable you to make a living, I think.
Yeah, absolutely right. And we don't know where it's going, right?
Right.
Right. I mean, you just have to be ready to roll with the punches. So if you choose in any of this that you're going to only follow one narrow path, you better hope that path is not blocked at some point.
Exactly. As bleak as it looks, I think there are going to be kids who come up with music we've never heard of, with sounds and ideas we've never heard of, in delivery models and recording models that we've never heard of, and it's on them, man. We have to turn it over.
My new site, Stanton Moore Drum Academy, is the perfect online drum learning platform for any level drummer to learn how to play the drums the same way I did, with the advantage of having me road test the material on hundreds of stages, countless clinics, lessons, and master classes, and dozens of studio sessions every year. On the site, you'll find over 13 hours of video, dozens of written lessons, and fresh material gets added all the time. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of you as subscribers on the site, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
Well, I just had my students out here at the house a couple nights ago, and I just listened to them talk very matter-of-factly about a bunch of bands and players that I didn't know who in the heck they were talking about, which I didn't by no means was I going to pretend like I knew what they were talking about. I mean, certainly a few of these guys I did, but by and large, they were talking at a very high level. By the way, they were talking about rhythmic displacement within the grooves and some of the stuff that Questlove does, and so on and so forth, and D'Angelo and some of these guys that I am familiar with, and it's just like, well, these guys are taking it seriously. They've got some stuff going, and the days of me lecturing them about listening to Philly Joe Jones, I mean, they're into that, but they've got some other things going on too.
Yeah, that's why I like doing these interviews. I get drummers from all walks of music, and there's guys playing stuff I don't know anything about, and don't know how to play, and it kicks my butt, kicks all our butts. That's the way it's supposed to be, right?
Right.
Now, you also have other experience I'd like to talk to you about. One is PAS.
Yes.
You've been involved in a very big way with PAS. You were the president of the whole thing, or a chapter president?
Well, I was a chapter president in 1981 in Ohio, and then got involved, continued to become involved with PAS, and I was the editor, one of the editors of the magazine, the drum set side, and then just kind of evolved from there. Joined the board in '90, and went up through the ranks, and then I was president of PAS in '99 and 2000.
Well, I'm sorry to talk over you. For our viewers who don't know, that's the Percussive Arts Society. And if they don't know what it is, I encourage them to look it up, and I encourage them to join that. Why is that? Tell us what that organization is and why it's important.
Well, Percussive Arts Society is the primary organization representing drummers and percussionists worldwide, in the sense that the resources are available through the internet worldwide, and there are a growing number of activities that are sponsored or affiliated with PAS worldwide, and so during my tenure as an officer and then as president, the internet was just getting up and running. So that was that was one of my goals back in the late '90s, was to sort of try to reinvent the society via the internet and the resources available, and that would have happened anyway. But we had a group of people that were, I think had some vision about it, and that was a very fertile time, of course, the '90s and early 2000s for all forms of percussion, and so I think that PAS's foothold and growth sort of went right along with that during that period. So it's a very exciting time for me personally and professionally, and it's still very exciting, and I think things are going well with PAS right now.
I think so. One of the things I think happened in that period you're referring to is it became much more inclusive. My thoughts on PAS is that it started out as classical educators and brought in the jazz drummers. Well, let's bring in the rock and funk guys. They play great too. Well, how about the world guys, the world music guys, all these instruments people had never heard of before? Come on in. How about drum corps? Yeah, we got to have them in. How about drum circles? How about those amateurs that just do, fun drumming? How about health and wellness? How about everything? And
that's right.
During your tenure in those recent years, my perception is that it's become so inclusive that it's really cool.
Well, we really tried to do that. I mean, just very proactively go that direction because you're right. I was a bit of an anomaly during that period because I was a college percussion teacher, but I was an active gigging drum set player who was the president of PAS, and of course that's Steve Houghton was a president after me, and but there haven't been very many guys like that, and so that was certainly a part of what we're thinking, trying to bake it into the mission, if you will, of the organization.
And well done. And let's talk about, for kids who may not know, maybe watching, PASIC. Tell us what PASIC is.
Well, PASIC is a yearly event that occurs typically in November, the first couple of weeks of November, where 5,000 or 6,000 of your best friends come together. And Michael, as you say, it's a big party in the sense that everybody's there. Everybody is hanging out. I mean, that, I don't know that you can take I can't imagine taking a family of instruments, like having a woodwind convention or a brass convention. The trumpet players would be trying to outblow the trombone players. It's
a love-in. It's a drummer love-in.
It really is. And no one really cares if you play drum set or marimba or hand drums or a symphonic percussionist. You're just hanging out because at the root of it, we're all drummers.
You're in the hippest club in the world. You're a drummer.
Yeah, and so that's just it. And so the other part of it is, for those who haven't been as a part of this, we go to clinics sometimes, and so comes out on stage, and you might get an autograph or this or that. I mean, at PASIC, these people are walking up and down the halls. You just stop. You can chat. You might even have lunch with somebody.
Exactly.
it's part of the philosophy, I think, that when you go, it's sort of a transformation on the part of some of the biggest names in the business are not going to turn their back on a young kid who
Well, I want
comes
to
up
point out that applies to the. I used to go when I had a simple company as an exhibitor, and that applies there as well. If a kid
Absolutely.
comes to you, a teenage kid comes to you at NAMM, which is the Music Merchandising Dealer Convention, where you're there to write business, and there's 100,000 people there, you don't have time to talk to that kid.
Correct.
At PASIC, that's who you're there to talk to. So when kids say, I want to go to NAMM, I said, go to PASIC, man. Because you can go, Remo, rest in peace, you could go talk to Remo. You know, you could go talk to Bob Zildjian. You could go talk to any of these, Vic Firth would be there, you know, and willing and ready to listen and talk and promote their agenda and bring in new converts. So it's a great experience.
Yeah, and so I think as we talk about that, I mean, unfortunately, some of our great friends are no longer with us, but Remo Belli was one of the founders of the organization. Vic Firth was on the board for many years. So we're not talking about, you know, individuals. We're not talking about an organization that had some kind of a arm's length relationship. These guys were you know, integral in developing this, you know, very special organization.
And remain true to it the rest of their lives. Not only that, you had all those characters running around. The Lenny DiMuzios and the Freddie Grubers. And Jim Chapins, who I know you're very tight with. And Jim would give a guy he had sticks in his pocket. He'd give a kid a lesson in an elevator.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just had to ask it.
And didn't care who it was. Yeah.
Beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Now, I also want to pursue, I mean, you have so many aspects that are interesting. You've been involved in the retail end of it, too. You co-founded with Jim Rupp, I think, Columbus Pro Percussion?
Yeah, Jim and I started Columbus Percussion in 1981.
Percussion, pardon me.
Yeah, and that was the original corporate name, okay? You know, that was for your younger viewers. When we go back to the late 70s, the beginning of the 80s, things were just blowing up in percussion. I mean, Modern Drummer magazine was, you know, just going crazy, and the business was developing sort of exponentially, and many in many large metropolitan areas, you had you didn't have Guitar Center, you didn't have Sam Ash. All you had was 800 numbers, maybe. The internet wasn't there. So, you know, if there was a market, that's where these professional drum shops opened. And so Jim and I started in a very, very small space, but we took a philosophy which still remains. I've been away from the business now since '06. Not for any reason other than the fact that I had my teaching, my playing, and I was an executive director of an arts organization at that time. But anyway, we started the business with the philosophy that we were going to take a full-line music store approach to percussion. Now, what that means is that we wanted to deal with the professional player, the student player, the parent, do repairs and give lessons like a full-line music store would do if they were selling band instruments and guitars and organs and giving lessons, etc.
And that rarely existed back then, right?
That is correct, yes. Yeah. Now, we had a great model for a full-line music store in Columbus, Ohio, a gentleman by the name of Ziggy Coyle, Coyle Music Center, who had a very successful full-line music store. So, and we were good friends with Ziggy. I mean, we ended up being competitors, but he was a great guy. And so seeing that model, you know, directly across the street was helpful for us. And so we grew very quickly. And it was a time when you know, you could grow. And the marketplace, a little bit of history here, you can appreciate this. The marketplace was very forgiving. And so if somebody came in and they said, well, what kind of Latin stuff do you have? And we would say, well, we have 2 congas, 3 cowbells, and a pair of bongos. Oh, cool. I can actually see a place that has some bongos.
Right.
You know, now that's obviously wouldn't cut it today. but we sort of matured with the business, and we were very fortunate in that regard. And Jim still has the business today. Mm-hmm. It's in its location that we moved to in 1990, and he's doing great.
Well, that's a great history and an accurate analysis of how drum shops came into being, but pretty soon that whole model changed, and the guys who kept up with it did pretty well. Some of them didn't. The internet came on board, yeah. And man, when I started, there were people who were mad at me for selling to dealers who sold on the internet. Hi, this is Michael Vosbein, your host for Drummer Nation, and I do the show as labor of love, but I could use a little help. If you'd like to be a patron of the show, please go to the site patreon.com/drummernation. Help us out. Thanks.
I think one of the things that we ended up doing, Michael, was again this full line kind of approach. We also sold to a lot of schools, mm-hmm. and so that really helped sustain our business, and I think has helped to sustain the business. As the pro drum set market has diminished right. over the last 10 years, the school side of the business has continued to grow, and so that part has been very helpful. I was
talking to Fred Gretsch about that on an interview for Classic Drummer that's not out yet, that in spite of the changes, there still is an underlying commitment to brick and mortar as the community hub for musicians and drummers.
Yeah.
And there still is the commitment to education.
Yeah.
That fuels the whole industry.
Yes, and I was telling a couple students the other day, as things change in all towns, but we happen to have in Columbus, Ohio, an extraordinary number of really great drummers. I mean, really great drummers. Mm-hmm. Of course, any town has got some good drummers. This place, lots of us are out traveling all over the country and the world. It's just an extraordinary number of guys who can really play. And somebody asked me the other day, like, what do you attribute that to? And I said, well, I really think part of it had to do with the fact that in the early 80s and 90s, we're creating this hang at this drum shop, Now, you can go back in the history of drum shops, and it existed at the Hollywood Drum Shop,
But that was very rare.
Yeah, very rare. Frank's Drum Shop, obviously, right. Maybe the best example in Chicago. Mm-hmm. Ippolito's in New York. Mm-hmm. That was, Jim and I had done a fair amount of traveling, so you go into Ippolito's or you go into Frank's Drum Shop. You never know who you're going to run into there. So we kind of had that as young guys. We kind of had that imagination and dream as we started doing this way back when.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I lived in LA for 10 years, and I'd go to Stan at Pro Drum, and Chick Corea would be in there looking for mallets. And all the cats who were in the studios all day would come and hang. You go in there on a Friday afternoon, and anybody could be there.
Yeah. So I remember the first time I ever went to New York when I was back playing in the Poconos. I don't want to bore anybody with the old guy stories, but in Ippolito's, here was Joe Jones, who lived real close there, Mel Lewis, and Elvin, arguing about something, just hanging out in Ippolito's. I'm a kid like 20 years old. I pretended like I was looking at brushes for about an hour just to see, hear these guys talk. Mm. And I knew exactly what I wanted, but I was just going to, dork around until I could, I want to take it all in. That's what the professional drum shop was like. Mm-hmm. And, for those who haven't experienced it.
Well, things are changing now. Do you think there might be a glut of material, of product out there? LP's a great company. They have like 35 cowbells. And how many cajones are on the market now? 200?
Well, there's got to be. It makes it hard for the retailer.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, because you have to you have to make decisions about what everybody wants, but you've got 5 cajones, and then the guy comes in and says, well, I don't want these 5, I'd like to have number 6. Wow, it's tough, but hey, I guess that's the evolution of the business. I mean, we can remember obviously you were in the cymbal business. The greatest thing that ever happened to cymbals was when Bob Zildjian decided to start Sabian, because all of a sudden, and I picked this up from not only a jazz drummer side, but from the concert cymbal side. Like in the early 80s, like, oh my God, there's hand-hammered cymbals again. And so, not only did that create product that dealers had to have, but it also created great awareness and appreciation for quality that maybe wasn't there 5 or 10 years before.
You're preaching to the choir there. I mean, I had a handmade cymbal company running into all kinds of hell, sourcing it in Istanbul, and I wanted to sell to a larger established company. Who could I turn to? Sabian. They made handmade cymbals, and they know how to do it right, and they were willing to work with us, and they're all just great people up there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now you have some, let's plug your books too. You have some books and awards. You probably won't want to talk about your awards. Let's start with your books or DVDs. I saw some video of you the other night.
I've got an old DVD, Snare Drum Basics, that the Hudson guys did back many years ago. But I think it actually, sort of like my book as well, it sort of deals with the fundamentals. I mean, I have to do that all the time, and so I think that there are so many great products out there, but oftentimes you see people trying to work through their playing, but they don't have a fundamental understanding of how to pick up the sticks or how their hands work or whatever. So that's what that is about. If you can get past some of the dated looking technology.
That doesn't matter. I saw one last night, and it's completely relevant.
Yeah. And then I have a book called Complete Percussionist, which is published by Barnhouse, and that is it's a percussion methods book for methods class people, but it's not very expensive. And if anybody wants to get some fundamental information about just an overall percussion, information, foreign terms, legit stuff. And then I just finished a project with Michael Udow. Michael used to be the percussion professor at Michigan, and it's a pedagogy book. It's a teaching book where I'm doing about 20% of it on drum set pedagogy. Dennis DeLucia, the marching DCI Hall of Fame guy, does about 15% of the book, and then Michael Udow does the rest. That has a lot of information about how to approach the drum set from a teaching standpoint, a learning standpoint, and some good video resources as well. So I'm pretty excited about that. That's not published yet, but it should be out in the next year.
And now tell us about the Yamaha Legacy Award 2014.
Well,
congratulations, first of all.
Thank you. I've been a Yamaha guy since the late 80s, and so they just every year we honor one or two people, usually somebody from the education side, and then I think Dave Samuels got his award the same year that I got my award, and it's just a way in which they just recognize people who have made a certain contribution to the business and have been loyal supporters of Yamaha. I mean, I've been, I've always admired Yamaha, the people who work there, the consistency. And I was talking this morning with a former student from Nashville about going out on the road. I mean, I'm sorry to be, pumping them, but it relates to what I'm talking about here.
No, I'm asking you to.
When to me, being able to have a predictable product when you go out on the road is very important, because I do a lot of playing, a lot of traveling where I've got rental kits, and so in the rider, it states what I hope to have there. And if it's a Yamaha kit, I know that the hardware is going to be right. I know, and we all have our own personal preferences of things, and we've all got some other drums. I got in my studio here at the house, I've got a Gretsch kit. I've got some other drums, but on an ongoing basis, I've had such great luck with that company, and so I guess that the award is it's in recognition of their support and my support to them.
Well, congratulations, well deserved. Let's get all your endorsers in. You have Sabian, cymbals,
That's
Yamaha
correct.
drums. Who's your stick guys?
I have
a signature stick.
A signature stick with Innovative in maple and in hickory, and then and I've had a long association with Remo.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to go too much longer because we don't want to push the limits of podcast audiences. But you and I could talk all day, so I'd like to invite you to do another one at some point.
I'd love to. I mean, I've always admired, Michael, your work with the company and companies, plural, and just your willingness to move on and not just get on the boat, and sail all day, but jump right back into it with something else. So that's terrific.
Thank you, man. I like it. Keeps me in the game, and it's hard to get out. I saw Barry Greenspan at NAMM a few years after he had sold or closed Drummer World in New York, right?
Yeah.
I said, Barry, what are you doing here? He said, I don't know, man. These are my peeps.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I know what you mean.
We know what he meant.
Yeah.
We're all in, right?
Yeah. Well, you saw me at NAMM this year, right? I was there to do an educational session, but there's still something electric about walking in that room, even though I've been out of the retail side of it for 10 years. So
the camaraderie among drummers is unequaled in any other instrument.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, my friend. Well, thank you so much, and we'll talk soon. I'll see you on the flip on one of these events somewhere, right?
Great. Thank you, Michael. Have a good day.
Thanks, Bob. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This is your host, Michael Vosbein, and I'd like to thank our friends at Sabian Cymbals, Sound Synergies, Stanton Moore Drum Academy, and Drum Center of Portsmouth. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.